Hello there.
What's up?
I haven't used my voice box at all today. I don't know how I'm going to talk. Do you know how to talk?
No.
Sugar. Well, I'll figure it out on the fly. How's that sound, everyone?
Sounds like a plan.
I made my way upstairs, dreading what the rest of my morning was going to look like, with Eustace across the room from me. But it turned out that she was not there. Either she had finished her work while I had been dawdling, or she had let her own discomfort get the better of her and do what I wasn't strong enough to do, and simply not show up. I sighed and sat down at my desk. I opened up the massive book I was filling with my daily chronicles, but I was unsure what to write. The amount of delicate pruning I would have to do made it difficult to know how to begin at all. Against my better judgment, I was not about to commit Catherine's sin to writing. And I didn't particularly want to immortalize my altercation with Eustace either. Or did I? I considered that extolling these sins might take some of their weight from my shoulders. If I was not being entirely truthful to those around me, I could at least be truthful to myself and God. I was being changed in many ways outside of my cell, but I did not want to become a liar. I was no liar, I told myself. I was no thief. I scratched my pill against the page idly as I debated myself in my own head. It was so quiet in the library that the sound seemed to fill the room. It didn't help me decide. As Charity had said, it wasn't like I was about to forget any of this. I closed the book and stood up. I at least had the wherewithal to recognize when no work was about to get done. Eustace still hadn't shown up. I looked toward the bookshelves, the ones that seemed to stretch on forever into the darkness. Without Eustace here, could I...
Oh no.
No. Hurt as I was by her cruel game of dress-up, I had no intention of exacting any more revenge upon her. Slapping her was already well beyond the pale. Breaking her library rules would just be petty. Wouldn't it? I found myself in an argument with my own reasoning again. They were just books. What right did she have to tell me what to do? Was I so cowed by her that I feared what she might do if I touched her precious books? Set one of them out of order?
Oh, hello.
What do you got there, Darcy? Darcy had shuffled into the library carrying a long, hooked staff that I could only assume was a shepherd's crook. Oh, hello, Darcy. Can I help you?
Well, actually, Eustace sent me.
Is she keeping the goat in the library or something? Oh.
She is feeling under the weather and can't make it to the library today.
Well, that's quite all right. I understand.
She suggested I take you with me to watch the sheep today.
Oh, well, I have work to do still, actually, but...
Oh, don't worry about that. You can always do it tomorrow. Come look at a sheep. I'm not always in charge of the sheep. You don't want to miss this.
Darcy's like, come pet some fluffy boys, Hedwig. Do it.
Come on, it's time for sheep.
I couldn't say no to her, especially after what Charity had said earlier. Oh, all right then. Darcy beamed and beckoned for me to follow her. Is it really just sheep day, or is Darcy there to keep us from seeing what Eustace has back there?
I don't know.
Either way, time for some sheep.
Yeah.
We went down the stairs toward the cloister. Charity and Marta had left, presumably to go check in with the wine in the cellars. The sunlight was somewhat diminished. The fog was gone, but I could now see rain clouds gathering ahead. We took a right at the bottom of the stairs and continued past the rectory and kitchens.
It's a bit of a hike, if that's all right.
Is it? I'm quite stiff today, I'm afraid, and...
Have you been to the hospitalum? It's more or less the same distance, but this direction.
Oh, no, I haven't. More lies, but it was either that or explained to Darcy that I had sprinted from the hospitalum last night. What was it that I said earlier about not being a liar, though? I'm sure I'll manage, though. We left through another archway in the surrounding wall. I was beginning to wonder what the point of the abbey wall was in the first place. Anyone, it seemed, could come from either direction if they fancied it. For a moment, I wondered if it was worth telling the superior that it would be impossible to fairly accuse anyone of murdering Catherine when just about any old pervert could have walked into this place. Darcy had not been exaggerating about the walk. On this side of the abbey, there were no gentle slopes and hillocks. There were hills, and for the first time it truly struck me that Misericorde was more or less a mountain range. As we made our way over the impossibly green grass, wind whipped our robes around. I think Darcy may have been trying to chat, but it was impossible to hear anything clearly over the gusts of wind and flapping fabric. It was truly dizzying up here. I could see the village and the lake as I did on the way to the hospitalum, but they were utterly dwarfed by the hills surrounding them. It was beautiful and terrifying. I had never felt so small. Eventually, we crested a particularly sharp incline and paused for a breather. Hands on my knees, doubled over to catch my breath, I noticed a smattering of little white dots against the dark green grass of the slope across from us.
There they are.
Bully boys! We pressed onward. Eventually the hill smoothed out to a more manageable degree. By the time we approached the grazing sheep, the land was practically flat. It was as if we were on a tiny shelf on the side of the hill.
All right, then. This is my favorite job.
You have so many responsibilities. How do you manage?
Well, that's true. But to me, this is hardly a responsibility. Just look at them.
She gestured toward the sheep who had all turned to look at us. They were all chewing grass and seemed to be regarding me with the same kind of disinterest I generally expected from the sisters. They're, a bit scary.
What?
Well, I've never seen any animal up close, and there's so many of them.
They are sheep. They are nice. Look, that one already likes you.
She pointed behind me with her crook. I turned around and yelped. One of the sheep was standing right next to me, looking up at me while continuing to munch on grass. Ah!
You can touch them if you like.
Touch the sheep. Can you pet the sheep in Misericorde Volume 1? No, that's... I shan't be doing that.
Give it a try.
One of the sheep had approached her, and she was patting it on the head gently. I wouldn't say the creature appeared to be enjoying it, but at the very least it wasn't attacking Darcy over it. I held my breath and reached out a hand to touch the sheep closest to me. Hello? I rubbed the top of its head. It didn't really seem to care one way or another, but I hadn't lost any fingers. So what do we do?
This.
We just stand out here?
Yes. We just want to make sure nothing attacks them or eats them.
What would do that up here?
Wolves.
The word sent a chill up my spine. That's terrifying.
It would be, but not many wolves around here anymore. Have not seen a wolf in a very long time. And just from afar at that.
That's, comforting. It was not comforting at all. Knowing my luck, I felt like we were doomed to be torn to ribbons by the first pack of wolves Darcy had ever seen up close.
Just enjoy them and get some of this lovely fresh air. Mm-mm-mm.
We were sheltered from the wind on this side of the hill, and the air was cool and damp. The rain clouds, however, still threatened above us. In fact, as soon as Darcy had finished encouraging me to take in the fresh air...
Wow. Well, would you look at that?
I couldn't help but laugh.
Ha ha ha. Yes, just our luck.
Just our luck.
To be honest...
Hold on that thought for a moment there, Darcy. Creature Junction is the name of the song. To be honest.
I quite like the rain.
Oh, I could not remember the last time I had been outside in the rain. In my cell, I had always left the window hatch open a crack when it began to rain, just to catch a bit of the fresh scent that followed. Sometimes I would stick my hand out just to get my hand wet, just to feel something curious and different. I felt so thankful every time I caught a few raindrops in my palm, just to be alive. Whenever I felt a sunbeam hit my back, hunched over my writing desk, or when I would catch a fleck of snow and watch it melt into the creases of my skin. That had been enough. That had always been enough for me. I had never wanted to leave. I would have been happy for my whole life in that little room as long as I could see the rain outside of my window. I was glad it was raining. I did not want to have to explain the tears rolling down my cheek to Darcy. I like the rain, too.
Finally, someone else who agrees. Well, let's get these little beasties out of the rain, shall we?
Darcy began to gently shoo the sheep around with her staff. She pointed at a rickety wooden structure near the slope of the hill.
Try and get them over there.
I had no idea what to do, especially without a crook of my own. I sort of gestured at the sheep around me, I suppose. Maybe politeness would serve me where physicality couldn't. Come along, please. Thankfully, it seemed the flock didn't need me to tell them what to do. Most of the sheep were trotting toward Darcy's structure of their own accord. A few stayed huddled in front of me. I wondered if they were pretending to be herded for my benefit. Hedwig's very strange relationship with sheep. I like this. I made it under the wooden shelter just as it started pouring. Darcy was leaning against her crook, surveying the hills in front of us with a serene expression. I navigated through several nonplussed sheep to stand next to her.
Good work.
So, have you been coming out here every day?
Oh, goodness, no. I like to do it, but I am very busy. Moira does it sometimes, and also, I think, Margaret. Catherine would as well.
Our Catherine with a K? That's hard to imagine.
Catherine II.
Oh.
They aren't our sheep, strictly speaking. We just like to volunteer, but they are from the village. This is just where they come for transhumans.
Transhumans? What's that?
Oh, well, you have to rotate where sheep graze, depending on the time of year. Normally that man James would handle most of the shepherding up here, but, well, you know.
He's the accused, yes?
Yes.
How horrible. There was a pregnant pause. Do you think he did kill her?
I couldn't say. Angela found him trying to run from the abbey, and his cloak was covered in blood.
His cloak was covered in blood. He wasn't... What was it that we heard about his cloak? That it wasn't his?
Yeah, allegedly.
So he just he was fucking Catherine, then grabbed something to try to hide himself on his way out and picked the worst possible thing.
I don't know.
I still don't understand how the cloak fits into this. I don't have a good picture of it.
Yeah. I found it. Did you know that? I didn't even know anything bad had happened. I was busy putting out a fire in the dormitory and only noticed the cart in the distance out of the window.
A fire? This was the first I'd heard about this detail.
Yes, someone had put too much fuel in the fireplace, and it was blowing embers around. More of a nuisance than a danger, but it was getting out of hand. Anyway, all the evidence points to James being a little bastard, but strange things happen around here.
Someone had purposely put too much fuel on the fire, huh?
I am wary of how simple it all seems.
Like people dressing up as ghosts, you mean? This slipped out before I could register how barbed it sounded. Eustace was Darcy's close friend, and I realized any story Darcy had been told about last night would have been from Eustace's bespectacled perspective.
Or what?
Bespective. I was relieved then when Darcy gave out a guttural chuckle.
What am I going to do with you two?
Is she, very upset?
She told me all about it and sounded very sad. And I told her, well, it did sound like what you did was a bit cruel. And then she got mad and went to sleep. She will be fine, I think. Give it a few days.
A few days?
Maybe a week. I can't say for sure.
Is that, normal?
Oh, are you not used to people being angry with you?
I'm starting to worry that I will have to get used to it very quickly.
Eustace gets angry very easily. I really would not put too much thought into it. She and Adela avoided each other for a month because Eustace said sherry tasted like trough water. And Adela said, well, how do you know what trough water tastes like? And then a few days later, Adela said that some of the beer we had at luncheon tasted like piss. And Eustace was ready with, well, how do you know what piss tastes like? Catherine made them have a sword fight over it.
Wait, hold on.
With wooden swords.
Oh. Even still.
Yes, Catherine was a bit obsessed with them.
So there are wooden swords about. Okay.
She tried to train all of us up as swordsmen at one point. Swordswomen. Sword women. However one might say it.
Why on earth would she do that?
Well, as I am sure you have noticed, there are not very many of us here.
Well, yes.
And did you know there is a war going on?
I had heard that.
Well, Catherine wanted us all to be able to defend ourselves, I suppose.
I guess the downside of this is that everyone at the Abbey apparently has a reason to be capable of wielding a sword.
And to know that one's there and where
Yep.
it would be, just in case.
Thanks, Catherine. Oh, that's, well, that's rather extreme.
That's what the superior said when she found out about it.
I've heard a lot of stories about Catherine with a C's interests, but I still would have never have guessed that one.
I think it made a certain amount of sense. It was fun, but it made me a bit uncomfortable when I thought about it longer. I much preferred it when she was really into winemaking. Or sailing.
Winemaking? Oh goodness, I take it Marta wasn't pleased with that.
On the contrary, Marta was thrilled that someone was as interested in it as her. As far as I know, Marta taught Catherine everything she knew, and that got Catherine reading about more techniques and so on in the library. And then would tell Marta about that new stuff. But then one day it just stopped, I suppose.
Stopped?
The thing with Catherine.
Darcy trailed off in an uncharacteristic manner that surprised me just as much as a sudden yelp would have.
Catherine was unbelievably smart, but nothing ever satisfied her. She would become intensely passionate about a subject or idea for several days or weeks or months, and then it would change completely.
I see. You know, we've got medication for that nowadays.
Catherine loved many things aggressively, but it was always one thing at a time. If it was something similar to my interests, I was her best friend. If it wasn't, I felt like I barely knew her. I don't think I'm alone in that assessment. I miss her, but I sometimes think she was a bad friend. Not everyone will admit it, but I think a lot of us feel that we were at some point jilted by her random interests.
Yeah, I can understand that.
One day you are the center of her attention, and the next day she is off somewhere else, lavishing someone else with the same care you thought was just for you.
She sounds like she had a lot of love to give.
She did, that is true. But she would give so intensely, I cannot blame anyone for feeling. Hard to choose a word here.
Jealous?
Jealous sounds so romantic. I think Catherine often gave people a sense of purpose, and then, when she got bored or found a new subject to obsess over, that new outlook on life evaporated. Imagine being told you are actually destined to be a queen by somebody who starts teaching you etiquette and explaining how to do diplomacy to you. And then one day they're telling someone else the same story. Catherine liked to get us to plan for futures where we were musicians or knights or prophets, but at the end of the day, it was always pure imagination. She would have made a great poet, I think. I am rubbish at poetry.
Was anyone particularly put off by this? This is the first I've really heard about her habits being so, controversial.
Dunno. Some people minded and some minded less.
I don't know if this amounts to motive, but it's still very interesting to know that anyone might have had a reason at some point to be kind of a little pissy at her.
What I was thinking is, what if it's a situation like...
What if one of those interests was women?
Okay, so you kind of shortcutted to where I was going.
Oh,
but
I'm sorry. Go for it.
Darcy was saying like, it would be easy for someone to feel, I don't know how to put it. It's hard to say. And then jealous? Oh, well, jealous sounds so romantic. What if it was exactly that? What if someone here thought Catherine was in love with them? And then this turned into a one-sided lover's spat with this person who thought Catherine was in love with them and then left them, when in reality it was just Catherine has random interests that are really intense and cares about people a lot for a while and then doesn't for a while.
Yep.
And they didn't understand and get that. And it came out in the worst way, and oops, dead Catherine.
I still don't know if that amounts to motive to murder, but it certainly would add a new dimension to something. Like, that would certainly exacerbate a different situation, I think.
Or yeah, if someone already had other reasons to be frustrated, to dislike her, or to want her gone, that might push them over the edge or something.
Yeah. That's good. That's good to keep in the back of our mind, because we still won't really have a full picture of what she was like, but this certainly fits, I think.
Margaret was a bit stung when she started spending more time on theater than music, I think. And Angela had a big falling out with her, but I suppose that is not a big surprise. I was never bothered by it that deeply. It just made me a little sad sometimes. We were attached at the hip for a while, but then one day she started spending more time with Margaret and Moira. But that is okay. She was a savant, but I have my areas of expertise and I am quite happy with them.
As well you should be. Your work in the garden is difficult to put into words. Darcy beamed.
Darcy beamed.
And you seem to have a connection to God that only I can only hope to achieve a fraction of. I saw you in the garden that day when Eustace was chronicling your vision. It was wondrous.
Oh, that. You know, it's interesting. That is exactly what Catherine said to me when we were close.
You two spoke about visions?
Yes, she had them too. She wanted to compare them and examine them.
Interesting. I wonder if that's why Eustace doesn't want us looking around deeper.
Maybe.
Because maybe there's some stuff.
We started working on tinctures together to try and enhance them. Then one day she just stopped.
Stopped having visions?
No, I don't think so. In fact, I remember her having quite a vivid one. That is what Eustace told me, at least. Like I said, Catherine started spending much less time with me all of a sudden.
Do you know what she saw? Darcy shook her head and leaned on her crook. She looked a little weary.
I barely remember my own visions if Eustace isn't there to write them down. I'm not sure anyone was with Catherine when she had the big one.
The big one?
Whatever it was affected her deeply. So deeply that I never wanted to question it. At the time, I was worried I had upset her. It took her to a dark place, I think. Whatever it was she saw.
How horrible. We watched the raindrops fall in silence for a moment. An impatient sheep nudged my thigh. You know, it's funny. The vision I saw you have, it was completely true.
True in what sense?
Well, a lot of it sounded like nonsense at first, but you set it on fire, goat, right before you came back to us.
Is that so?
Yes, and that evening I saw, well...
Eustace's little joke.
That was also one of the elements we had picked up on that was tying it back to Eustace, was that it was related specifically to Darcy's vision.
Yeah.
And we were wondering, like, is there anyone else who has access to these? But, yeah, because Eustace kind of got it from both ends there.
Oh, by the way, I take it from the sound of things that my little concoction worked.
Oh, yes! I suddenly remember the little potion I had downed before heading to the Misericorde. Oh dear, did I drink too much of it? I ended up finishing all of it before the evening started. Do you think that's why I...
Smacked Eustace? No, I think the wine had probably taken over at that point.
She looked over at me and offered a sympathetic smile. The rain was beginning to slow.
Eustace will come around.
I hope so. We do have to work together.
You could always try apologizing first.
Would that help? I wanted to last night, but... Oh, maybe I should just leave her be.
No right answer here. Do whatever feels right to you.
I'll try. We urged the flock back out into the field once the rain cleared. The rest of our time there was spent in silence. I could occasionally hear Darcy cooing to one of the sheep, but for the most part, all I could hear was the wind and my own thoughts. I heard so many things about Catherine now that I felt I should have a complete idea of who she was, but there were people in the Bible who I had less information about who I could nonetheless picture perfectly. What they would say if I asked them certain questions, how they would react to different situations, but... Sounds like Hedwig's got some OCs. But every time I felt like I was getting closer to knowing Catherine, my image of her was disturbed. It was as if I was staring into a reflection in a pond, but the surface was being pelted with pebbles. The sense of loss I had felt when the superior had told me the news. The desire for justice I had felt that kept me going after breaking my perpetual vow. Were those feelings based on a lie? Had I simply the luck of being Catherine with the C's newest obsession before she was taken from me? Could I even consider her taken from me? What about the copy of Medea hid in my bedroom? What had Catherine with the C's planned for me, Ben? What else would she have told me to make me feel special? Would her visits to the Squint have suddenly ended one day, even if she hadn't died? I was feeling undeniably sour when it was time to leave. Yeah, we haven't even mentioned that part, but yeah, they're like, Hedwig certainly thought the connection they had was special. But.
Yeah. That also does put a new light on things because it seemed like it could get gay in the beginning there, right? And
a little bit.
Seems like that was the impression Catherine was giving to everybody.
Right, in that if there was someone who might have taken that to mean an actual romantic overture, then.
Yep.
We corralled the sheep back into their barn, and then we hiked back to the abbey in silence. I considered asking Darcy about her visions again. Asking Eustace to see her notes had been a dead end, and I was wickedly entertained by the idea of stepping over her to get what I wanted. A form of retaliation less violent and far more productive than a smack on the cheek. I thought better of it in the end.
Thank you for your help, Hedwig.
You're welcome.
Helpdwig.
Oh, it was a nice change.
Glad to hear it.
She smiled and clasped her hands together. I had no idea how she could have any energy left to work, but I could scarcely finish my goodbye to her before she had fluttered off in the direction of the kitchen. Supper that evening was a quiet affair. Nearly everyone seemed exhausted. I remembered that I was not the only one who hadn't gotten much sleep last night. Eustace did not look at me once during the entire meal. A small part of me hoped she was going to disappear and return with pudding like she had the first time we had dined together and revealed that her anger had been a front this whole time. The nuns trickled out one by one. I got up and stretched. I felt incredibly stiff, and I realized that hiking out to the sheep and staying on my feet all day was not helping my recovery from last night's marathon. At the very least, I hadn't vomited and passed out today. Margaret and Flora were waiting for me when I left the rectory. Oh, hello.
Hello, Hedwig. Flora has a question for you. I'm not 5, you know. I was gonna ask anyway.
Is there something wrong?
No, just last night. Did you mean it when you said you'd teach me how to paint? I think she means, would you be free to teach me how to paint, please?
Sure.
Sure.
Oh.
That.
I must admit that I had already forgotten this promise. I felt bad. Even under duress, I shouldn't have made a commitment I could ignore so easily just to make Flora feel better. I had absolutely no business teaching anyone to draw, and I desperately wanted to say no. However, yes, of course. Where would be a good place to meet?
I don't know, the library?
I thought about the clutter on the desks in the library. How about we just do it back in the rectory here? There's a nice big table in there.
Sure.
Let's meet back here in a few minutes then. I need to go and get my supplies. Flora nodded and skulked back off in the direction of the dorms. Is this going to be our first time going back to our cell?
I don't know.
Hedwig hasn't gone back to her cell since leaving, and she left a lot of books and stuff in there. I wonder. I hadn't thought about it, but I was going to need access to my old cell.
Yep, called it right before the line came up.
Yeah. All of my illumination supplies, brushes, paints, and ink were still in there. My heart sank. I started walking toward the superior's office. I would need her key. Margaret followed.
Thank you, Hedwig. I was worried for a minute that we were both going to look like real blackguards.
I must admit that I had forgotten all about it, but I am happy to help.
Likewise. She was hanging around me all morning, and I was struggling to remember why. Then I remembered that we'd all had a little heart-to-heart last night.
Oh my. Did you forget all about what happened?
Oh no. How could I?
Oh.
Some details just took precedence over others.
Right. She grinned.
I should go check in on the cellars and make sure Adela and Marta haven't killed each other. Talk to you later, Hedwig.
She broke from me at the staircase down to the cellars. I continued to the superior's door and gave it a little knock.
Oh, Sister Hedwig, is something wrong?
Oh, no, not at all. I just, I need you to unlock my cell.
Whatever for?
It's a long story, but I promised Sister Flora I'd teach her about illuminating manuscripts, and I only just remembered that all my tools and paints are still in there.
Flora taking an interest in something. Goodness, we can't let this opportunity go to waste. Give me just a moment.
Oh, I expected her to say something else, but oh wow, that's cool. She's on board. The door closed. Shortly after, it swung open again, and the superior emerged carrying her ring of keys. The unmistakable jingle sent a shiver up my spine. We took the stairs up to the second floor and continued down the hall. The huge door that had slammed and scared the sisters all witless was to my left. The window was shaking it gently as something that could shake at the very least. The walls around us seemed to pulse and vibrate as the door beat against its frame as if it were in some great behemoth's lungs. As we turned to the right, I remembered the hideous carving Margaret had shown me with a jolt. Perhaps we really were in the presence of some monstrous creature. I thought about warning the superior about the evil magic circle I'd seen, but I could find neither the words nor courage to bring it up. It was so dark down here. I realized just how out of their way the sister would have had to come to seek my advice as anchoress. We stopped at the door, and I stared at the hagioscope as the superior looked for the right key. It was a bizarre device. I had never really looked at it from the outside, but it looked rather cobbled together. The metal frame was wedged into the stone brick, and the little door looked ready to rust right off its hinges. I opened it idly and took a peek inside. My heart sank as I realized it was impossible to see into the cell from this side. There was no way that Catherine with the C and I would have ever been able to see each other. The hole in the wall was big enough to pass the books I had needed for transcribing through one at a time, but there was a bend in the middle that prevented direct access. It made me realize just how thick these stone walls were, and how isolated I truly had been. I spoke into the hatch. Hello?
Feeling nostalgic? Ah, here we are.
She selected a key and inserted it into the door. The door lurched open.
Oh, how embarrassing.
Oh, what happened?
Nothing. I just forgot which way some of the doors open here.
She stepped inside. With a great trepidation, I followed. It was just as it had been, left. I took a deep breath. I felt lightheaded. I went to the shelf and procured a wooden box from the bottom. I could hear the ink bottles rattling inside. This is all I needed. Thank you.
Very well. Shall we?
I nodded. I didn't want to spend any longer in this place. I was not exactly sure how close the evil symbol was to my cell, but I wanted to put as much distance between it and myself as possible. I turned around and froze. There was something on my bed that should not be there.
Ha 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 ha! Ha 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 ha!
The half-finished copy of Matthew was sitting there.
I knew this was gonna happen. I fucking knew it. She goes back into the cell and stuff's in there that it wasn't there when she left.
Do you see our current location?
Violated. That's good.
So,
the superior definitely didn't lock the door, and that's what she realized when she put the key in, and she didn't want to say it.
Something like that, yeah.
The door to the cell has been unlocked. Someone was able to get in and out, but why does that matter? Other than it matters to Hedwig. I don't know.
It's the second time someone has left a book in a very purposeful location for us, and it's hard not to feel, vaguely threatened.
Yeah. Spotted something else you needed?
No. I just... That isn't where I left this.
The book? Are you sure?
I am positive.
You must be mistaken. I have the only key for this room. Perhaps you were reading it when Catherine came to collect you and forgot to put it back.
That is not possible. I picked the book up and placed it on top of the box I was carrying.
What is it?
It's the last book I was writing before, well...
I see. Goodness, it's in rough shape. It looks as if it wasn't properly covered in the cart ride up to the abbey. James's actual crime may have been negligence. Nonetheless, I understand it must have some sentimental value.
May I take it?
I don't see why not. You can take anything from here as far as I'm concerned. I see no reason why this room should be locked at all anymore, to tell you the truth.
I nodded. I wasn't about to explain that... Does she not have the key at all anymore? And she's like, oh, now I don't have to lock it. So I wasn't about to explain that this book was appearing on my bed felt like some sort of supernatural threat. At the very least, unfettered access to my old books was a happy outcome. If I could ever brave coming back here again, that is. We left the room and traveled back through the halls. The superior left to return to her office, no doubt swamped with clerical work. I stopped off by the dormitory to deposit the bedraggled book in my new sleeping quarters. Flora looked highly irritated when I finally made it back to the rectory. Been worrying about the book, my cell, and that vile sigil all the way there, but my fear was quickly pushed out of my mind by Flora's verbal assault.
You said you'd be a few minutes.
I'm so sorry. I had to get the superior to help me unlock the door to my old cell. I lifted up the box of supplies and rattled it gently.
Oh, fair enough. Well, I brought some parchment.
Oh, good. I would have been very embarrassed if I had to make another trip. Flora shrugged and hopped up the stairs to the door. She laid out 2 piles of simple paper. I set the box down between them and began unloading my supplies, inks, gold paint, and a few horsehair brushes. I pulled a chair out and sat down. Flora followed suit. So, where should we start?
That's what I was going to ask you.
Well, what's a moment from the Bible you'd like to try illuminating? I always like doing the Annunciation, or...
That might be a little advanced for me.
Oh, well, how about a letter?
Just one letter? That's going a bit far in the other direction, don't you think?
Not at all. There's a lot you can do with just one letter.
Huh. Okay then.
A letter would be good to start with. I suppose T is always useful, or A. Flora snickered.
Sure.
Let's go with A then. Oh, was that...
Let's go with A then.
You don't sound particularly enthused.
It's a letter.
I rummaged around in my box of supplies and produced 2 hardened charcoal stubs. I handed one to Flora, who raised her eyebrows.
Where did you get these?
You know, I am not sure. They got passed to me through the squint whenever I got new supplies.
They're much nicer than the ones I usually have.
I didn't know what to say to this, so I plowed ahead. I took one of the pieces of paper and began to sketch out a square in the top left corner. The paper was rougher and thinner than the parchment I was typically used to. I only held paper a few times and never marked it.
That's not an A.
We're just putting a square down so we know where to fit the letter.
Oh.
She took up the stick of charcoal and hastily drew a square. It was a bit squiggly. All right, so now what I would do is, well, I wasn't really sure how to verbally describe my process, so I instead began to draw. In a quick swoop, I outlined a large A in my square that touched all edges of the square, but left plenty of room for artistic embellishment. Flora squinted at my page, then attempted to follow suit. That's a good start.
Now what?
Typically, I'll ink the letter first and let it set. I don't do much of the detail work with the charcoal. It's a bit too thick for that. I peered into my supply box, wiggling my fingers. What color would you like your letter to be? Red, blue? Red, blue?
Why are you talking to me like I'm a weird baby?
Am I?
Yes. You know I'm almost 20, right? You don't need to do this performance for everything.
I wasn't aware that I was performing. Right, I had forgotten just how good Flora was at getting under my skin. My empathy toward her outburst in the Misericorde had overridden my usual distaste for her attitude.
Just talk to me normally.
This is how I talk to people normally.
Come off it. Everything you say is a question, even if you're not actually asking anything.
Oh, is that how I come across?
Does that immediately?
We glared at each other for a moment, but Flora eventually started giggling.
Just like that.
Huh? Oh. I laughed too. I couldn't help it. Happily, the tension seemed to have been released.
I guess that is how you normally speak.
You know, I haven't spoken to many people face to face.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I feel a bit of an asshole now.
Oh, that's quite all right. Red or blue?
Blue.
I passed her the blue and took the red one for myself, then laid out 2 inkwells from the box. I popped the lid of mine open, then procured 2 brushes. Flora was struggling to pull the cork out of her bottle of blue ink. Be careful opening that, it's...
Huh.
She managed to let the cork out, but in doing so, I jostled the bottle forward forcefully. A splash of blue ink landed on her sheet of paper. Here, let me... I reached over and picked her page up, curling and shaking it in an attempt to get some of the ink back into the bottle on the table. I was moderately successful, but there was a blue streak left on the paper.
Sorry.
It's not a problem. Just be careful. Ink is quite valuable.
I said I was sorry.
I poured some of my red ink into a well, and then dipped a brush in. Now you try to follow the lines with as few strokes as possible. That way it dries without a messy-looking texture. I tried to demonstrate, but the paper was soaking up more of the ink than I was used to, rendering the lesson a little moot. I forged ahead anyway until I had a satisfactory letter A on my page. Flora had been peering over my shoulder as I drew, and left to try on her own page once I had finished. She immediately put too much ink on her brush, and the beginning of her first line became a messy blob as a result. I could tell she was rushing this part, but I didn't want to frustrate her any further. Not bad. Shall we do some detailing with the gold paint? I could immediately sense Flora perking up. I uncorked the gold and chose a very thin brush. I like to make little patterns and can cheat a little bit. You focus on drawing one half like this. You can just copy it on the other side.
That's still drawing 2 very detailed things. I don't think that's much of a cheat.
Just give it a try.
Okay. How do you do that, though? Are those just random lines?
I think of them as vines.
Huh. That makes sense, I guess.
That's a good start. Keep filling it in. I sat and watched her fill in the square with gold lines. No patterns really ever came together, and I could tell she wasn't enjoying herself. Tried to avoid staring. Anyway, I wouldn't appreciate having my shoulder looked over in my cell. And Flora was liable to bite my head off if I did anything that could be interpreted as condescending.
Ugh.
So, what got you interested in art?
Oh.
Did Catherine draw much with a C?
A bit.
And she was going to teach you at one point? Before,
Yep.
What sort of things did she paint?
Lots.
Anything that you particularly liked?
Sure. There was this one she showed me that I really liked.
Oh?
Yeah, it was her holding some guy's head.
What?
It was so awesome.
Whose head head, was it?
No idea.
Goodness.
It was probably Holofernes, though.
I breathed a little internal sigh of relief. Holofernes. Of course.
So
Do you
that's
like that story?
I'm trying to remember the story. It's a famous artistic theme.
Oh, I know nothing about this, so.
In the book of Judith, where this general named Holofernes gets sent into the land of Israel and is oppressing the Jewish people and so on. And like nobody can get him to stop and so on. City almost falls, but Judith, a simple widow, manages to defeat him by simply waiting until he's drunk at night and then just waltzing on into his tent and whacking his head off.
Wow.
And that's why you'll see a bunch of classical art that has themes of Judith and Holofernes.
Wow.
Because #girlbossing it.
Yeah. A very interesting thing to have on the mind before dying in a similar manner.
Sure is, huh? Sure is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, Do you like that story?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Judith is a very interesting book. Have you read the whole thing?
No, just the gory parts.
I resisted the urge to bang my own head against the table. But you know the general thrust of it, yes?
Yeah, she pretends to be friends with Holofernes and then cuts his head off.
Do you know why she cuts his head off?
He was a bit of an arsehole.
How is your drawing coming along? I could hear that my voice was a bit pitchier than normal. Flora leaned back in her chair and gestured at her paper. That is a great first attempt. It was sloppy, but earnestly, it wasn't so bad. I was certain I had done worse when I was first starting out.
It still feels a bit empty.
You could add something to one of the corners, maybe?
Like what?
What about a crucifix?
Boring.
The crucifix is not boring.
It's 2 lines. I'm not being blasphemous. I just mean, it's not an exciting drawing.
I don't know then. A bird, maybe?
Or a cat.
Oh, that's a fine idea. Flora leaned forward in her seat again, looking very engaged all of a sudden.
Yeah, can you draw a cat?
I don't think I've ever tried. How about we both try one separate from the illuminated letters and compare?
Sure.
Both started sketching with charcoal on our own papers. I tried to remember what cats look like. I found them cute despite their reputations. I soon realized that I had only ever seen one scampering out of the kitchen. I actually don't know if I've ever seen a cat up close, now that I think about it.
Really?
Really, I just know of them, mostly. There are lions and leopards and so on in the Bible, which I was kindly reminded of, but
You never saw one before you became a nun?
so long ago I could scarcely remember if I had.
So you weren't born here then?
No.
Where do you come from then?
Trier.
Germany?
This is our first little, we had known Hedwig had a life outside before coming here, but this is like our first bit of Hedwig lore.
Yeah.
Trier, that's in Germany?
Isn't it?
I don't know. You're the one who plays map games all day long. You're the one who sits there playing fucking crusade simulation games.
Okay. Point number 1. That is in the name of the game, but point number 2, that's not an accurate summary of the game's purpose.
You sure about that? The game is literally called Crusader Kings. What are you doing if not being a little kingy and then crusading?
A lot of things. So Trier is there in Western Germany, right near the French border.
I think you mean right near the Luxembourg border.
Sorry, Luxembourg.
The Luxembourg.
Yeah, right near the Luxembourg border. Sorry, Luxembourg is small enough that I always forget it's there.
Reasonable.
And I'm like, oh, that's just a river in France, but no, it's the border. But yeah, it
Cool.
was probably part of France at various points, was it? I feel like it's in that region kind of went back and forth between who owned it, but let me check myself before I wreck myself.
Yeah, because this is specifically 1400, so it's a long way from home. What do you have to do to get sent here as a kid? And in a whole nother country.
Yeah. Okay, so it was part of Eastern Francia, which became the Holy Roman Empire.
Okay.
And Spain and France later squabbled over it, but that was during the 30 Years' War, hundreds of years later. So this was definitely in that time period's equivalent of Germany, which was not yet a single country. It was a bunch of stuff.
Right, because Germany. Yeah.
The Holy Roman Empire, which was neither holy nor Roman nor an empire, is how the classic stock phrase goes.
Got him.
Got him. Hedwig von Trier? Wow, I never would have guessed from your accent. You sound very English.
I have been here most of my life.
Yeah, but you're twice as old as I am. Some people's accents stick even when they move, like Adela. Moira and Catherine, too.
First of all,
Catherine
am not.
had an accent.
Huh?
Catherine had an accent.
Catherine had an accent. She moved from somewhere.
We didn't know that yet.
But from where? First of all, I am not that much older than you.
Do you remember much from before you moved? How long ago was it?
Almost 20 years ago.
Wow. So you were in there for as long as I've been alive.
Yes.
So you were like 20 before you moved and still lost your accent?
I would have been about 5 or 6, thank you very much.
Oh.
Or, well, 7 or 8 or 9 maybe.
Hedwig doesn't know how old she is.
Hedwig doesn't know how old she is. She knows she's been in there for 20 years, but she doesn't know how old she was when she came here.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's not that unusual for the time period.
No, but also she has like vague memories of being like we knew she had been old enough to have some memories,
but not old enough to have them be well formed.
Right.
It would be so funny if you brought the accent back for a day or two. Just confuse everyone for a bit. Hello, my Name ist Hedwig. Something like that.
I smacked my charcoal down on the table in exasperation. My cat drawing is as finished as it was ever going to get. Let's compare our drawings now, shall we?
I love it!
I love it!
That's the best cat I've ever seen in my life.
And it's got a human face on it, which is very cute.
It's so concerned to be here.
I love it! Hedwig, you did wonderfully.
That's not what a cat looks like.
I tried my best.
I love this one too!
They did this. Is that what a cat looks like?
It's closer than yours. Yours has a very human face.
So does yours.
Whatever. Cat eyes don't look like that.
Is that so?
Yeah. I think so, at least. They never sit still long enough for people to draw them.
Flora, do you know something about the cat that Angel's been chasing for weeks now?
Look, you have to promise not to tell anyone.
I honestly felt relieved. Compared to the secrets I was keeping for Catherine with a K, the Superior, and myself, Flora's request was positively quaint. Of course, it's just a cat.
Yes, but nearly everyone else here hates cats. I have to pretend they're vermin too, but he's such a sweet little thing.
He?
Oh, the cat. His name is Campy.
That's so unique.
Catherine picked it.
Oh. Perhaps I was wrong about the simplicity of this promise if I was tacitly protecting a dead woman's secret as well.
The full name's Campignon, something like that.
Campignon? Isn't that... That sounds rightish.
Champignon is mushroom, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
She liked fancy classical sounding names a lot. And that would track if she happens to be French.
Because, yeah. I could see that. So we might be actually getting a hint here about where Catherine with the C came from.
Yeah.
So the cat was hers?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know if you could really call him anyone's cat. He just showed up one day and took a liking to Catherine, and she gave him a name and fed him scraps and stuff.
And now he's your charge?
Yep.
That's sweet.
I meant it when I said I need you to promise not to tell anyone. Some of that lot are likely to give Campy a swift kick if he gets too close. I'd be in so much trouble if anyone found out.
Don't worry. I can keep a secret.
Thanks.
She looked away as she said this, and her face showed not even a hint of a smile, but I still felt good. Felt like I had made a real connection. Must be nice to have something to remember Catherine with a C by. Well, shall we finish for now?
I guess.
Should we plan on meeting up again for more practice soon? She shrugged and glanced at her papers.
Maybe.
And, here, take these. I handed her the sticks of charcoal. For practicing on your own, since you like to draw.
All right.
Maybe I hadn't made as real a connection as I'd hoped. Just let me know if you want another lesson and we can plan for it.
Sure.
She scooped up her drawing and stuffed it into her robe. I got up to leave without pushing her chair back in.
Bye, Hedwig.
Have a good evening, Flora. I was left alone to pack my supplies up. I had to resist snapping one of the brushes in half. Oh my.
The cats were perfect. And it channeled that vibe of like the weird medieval guys Twitter account.
Yes.
Where it's just like, yeah, nuns and monks didn't necessarily have a good idea what all these animals looked like, but they did their best. And that's what counted. And we get to enjoy the fruits of that centuries later.
Yes, exactly. Ugh. I was completely exhausted by the time I had made it back to the dormitory. The relatively light art supply box weighed heavy like a millstone going up the stairs. I practically slammed it on my desk as soon as I made it into my room. An early night was the only thing I could think about. I got into my night clothes as fast as I could. As if I was trying to prove to myself I indeed intended to follow through on the idea. My body was so stiff that even stripping out of my habit felt laborious, and when I bent back down to pick my nightdress off the floor, I wondered if I even had the energy to stand up straight again. I groaned impolitely as I straightened out and let the clothes slip over me. Never again in my life did I want to run or hike. I was ready to sleep. However, as I ran my hands over the mattress in an attempt to straighten it out a little, I realized I had forgotten something important. There was still a book on my bed. The copy of the Gospel of Matthew that I had dropped off in a hurry before returning to Flora. Ominous as it was, I was at least glad I hadn't smacked my head into it like I had with the copy of Medea currently underneath the bed. I opened the book. The cover was still slightly damp, and some of the pages had fused together. I thumbed through carefully to the pages that had been opened when I had vomited all over it. The black bile had faded, but it was quite obviously ruined. Not sure what I was hoping for. A clue, perhaps, of who had returned it to my cell or how? Perhaps some demon had magicked it there through that accursed sigil. Why exactly this devil's nefarious plan included returning books to rooms they had been thrown out of, I have no immediate hypothesis. No, don't do it, Hedwig. Don't do it. You gotta look past the magic.
It was the gap.
No. I turned the page I had been working on when my time in the cell had been interrupted. Matthew 5:37. As I studied the ruined pages and saw no hidden messages nor threats, my anxiety evaporated. I slammed the book shut and threw it onto the floor with a thud. It was obviously another one of Eustace's pranks, I reasoned. Timing was certainly convenient after the threats of her ghost had given me in the Misericorde. Well, we know someone had watched her through her window, so someone definitely knew what that book was.
Yep.
When they found it. It doesn't necessarily have to be nefarious, but it definitely feels nefarious.
Mm-hmm.
I scoffed aloud with some small hope that she was somehow within earshot. Undoubtedly, if I hadn't knocked her onto her arse and unmasked her that night, this book would have been revealed to me at some portentous moment. I must have stored it myself to keep it out of view until whenever suited her little plan.
Grudge much, Hedwig?
Yeah, Hedwig is getting very much in grudge mode here. I could just see her casually asking the superior for the key in that infuriatingly flat voice of hers. She probably said she needed something from my shelf for the library. I slammed my fist into my pillow and buried my face in the divot. And then I remembered something. I pulled myself up on my knees and lifted my pillow. The little strip of black cloth was there. Proof! I reached over the bed for my stocking and stuffed it inside. I couldn't wait to see the look on Eustace's face when I showed her that. If I can find a missing patch on her frock. I laid down feeling satisfied. I mentioned profuse apologies over and over, and yet I still went to sleep, angry.
Where did the strip of fabric being
It's
mentioned
been a
come
while. I don't remember where she found that. I think she found it when she went outside to look at the area that had been outside of her window.
From? Oh, yes, that's what it was. I remember now. That's interesting. It's
also,
not going
didn't
to be
Darcy
Eustace.
mention at one point that they just mend them when they need to?
Yep.
So there might not even be a trail left.
But if there is, it won't point to Eustace.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely not. Have some water. The morning offices and luncheon passed by in a blur the next day. I went through the motions, but my mind was elsewhere. I'd sleepwalked through several days when I'd been feeling morose, but today was different. There was a high-pitched whine in between my eyes, so intense that I had a headache by the end of service. I felt as light as a bee and equally as prone to sting whoever bothered me. Yeah. It was not all anger. Some of it, I realized, was as luncheon came to a close, was nervous anticipation. I kept glancing over at Eustace, who seemed, to my chagrin, completely unbothered. Superior was waiting for us outside the rectory when we all left. She pointed at Eustace, Moira, and myself and beckoned for us to join her.
Are you all ready for a little fun? Absolutely. Good. It's high time the women of this abbey made an appearance in Linbarrow Village. And I thought an adventure outside the abbey would be an exciting little adventure for our newest, well, not newest, but you know what I mean. That's you.
That's me.
Just a little treat.
This doesn't count the little lies I was having to go along with for the sake of this quest.
Moira and Darcy worked hard yesterday to bake some fritters to share with the townsfolk.
What is it we're actually meant to do there? The Superior shot me a quizzical look.
Spread some cheer, of course. Attend to the people's spiritual needs. Nothing heals the soul like a sweet treat. She's right, though.
She is right.
She's right, though.
Yep.
They're really good, too, if I do say so myself.
Eustace had said nothing for the entire duration of the conversation. She remained silent as the Superior led us across the grounds to the front gate. A cart and a donkey were waiting there for us. There was a sturdy chest loaded onto the wooden cart that looked like one of us could have fit inside snugly. If it was full of sweet fritters, Darcy and Moira must have been very busy. I had no idea we kept a mule here.
We do not. Typically, we have to send word to have one delivered from the village if we need to travel, but this one has remained here ever since the incident. Oh.
Oh, this was the donkey and cart that James had been driving when he was last free. So how many animals was Darcy technically responsible for at this point? Moira stepped into the driver's seat of the cart, leaving me and Eustace to sit facing each other in the back. Superior looked uncharacteristically amused at the sight of us loaded into the vehicle.
My girls off on a diplomatic mission together. Had I the means, I would commission a painting. I haven't been down to the village in months at least. This is going to be a riot.
It'll be interesting to see what the townsfolk think of the nuns in the abbey. She took the reins and the cart wobbled forward. Moira turned to wave at the Superior. Eustace and I followed suit, although we were both less enthusiastic than Moira. The Superior disappeared behind the road as it began to curve downwards. What's up?
Good one.
I looked ahead and suddenly felt a wave of panic as I realized just how long and winding the path down the mountain was, and how far afield I was about to find myself. Oh God! Stuck in a cart with someone I'd rather never speak to again, no less. We're on roads, leaving. Oh, that's a good place.
Ah, you're finally awake. Tried to cross the border.
So, this will be new for you.
I suppose it will be.
Listen,
Eustace, I have no real interest in speaking with you at the moment.
Hedwig, what are you doing?
I don't know, being a person who's not well adjusted at knowing how to navigate social situations.
Yeah, but still. You two, let's not fight, Let's pretend all our little problems only exist in the abbey. And out here we're just traveling missionaries. Or brave soldiers on patrol.
no.
Or adventurous outlaws.
Hedwig, I owe you an apology.
More than one! She sighed and adjusted how she was sitting. She rested her forehead in her hands and looked at the floor of the cart.
I should have said something yesterday, but I was indisposed. So I'm sorry that this took so long, first of all. But I apologize for, well, you know.
Remind me. I felt strangely powerful. I folded my arms. Did she only do it once? Was it not her the other time?
I don't know.
I'm sorry that I dressed up as a ghost. I'm sorry that I tried to scare you. I went a bit far.
You did it more than once.
Yes.
Okay, so never mind. How? Why? I mean, it was so elaborate.
Well, I am the strangest. I saw the suit of armor and thought, well, this could be good for a lark.
What on earth for? That was some lark.
It's abbey tradition to do some sort of hazing prank. I just got carried away.
That is so petty and cruel. Even if it was appropriate to haze nuns, which it is not, why couldn't it be nicer? Aren't there any nice pranks?
Well, you're right.
What about, I don't know, a surprise feast or a gift? Something along those lines.
Well, I mean, I won't argue with you.
You could have just said boo, perhaps. Would still be a touch mean-spirited, but you killed a goat for your own entertainment. Eustace shook her head.
I did not kill a goat. That is entirely in your imagination.
I saw it plainly.
Anything you saw like that was a trick of the mind, I promise.
So I'm mad, is that it?
No, it happens to everyone. In a heightened emotional state, you'll often see things that conform to your expectations. Or your fears, as it were.
That is ridiculous.
It's true. Do you know there's a mosque in Turkey where worshippers believe they see the ghost of a young woman in the shadows? It sounds ridiculous, but so many people have claimed to have seen her, it could hardly be an accident, right? They all see a girl wearing a crown.
I don't particularly care what they're up to in Turkey. Eustace let out a heavy sigh.
Look, the point is that sometimes people see things that aren't there, that feel very real. I promise you, I did not kill a goat. I may have been nasty to you, but I would not have killed an innocent animal just to scare you.
So there was no goat at all?
I did not kill a goat in front of you. I would not do that.
But you would dress up as a ghost.
Well, yes.
And wave a flaming sword around.
Well, when you put it that way, it does sound like a rather cruel joke, doesn't it?
How did you even light the sword on fire?
I pressed the blade with oil and held it up to a torch. That's all.
I looked her dead in the eyes. She matched my gaze for a moment before the cart hit a bump and her glasses were knocked askew. Moira was chuckling softly.
Whoops. Sorry, I'm not very good at this.
I highly doubt that. You slipped right into the driver's seat without even asking. Eustace rearranged her glasses inside.
I don't always have a perfect grasp of how people might react to things I say or do. Sometimes I run with an idea that isn't as clever as I think it is, or speak my mind to people who weren't interested in my input. I'm sure you noticed that I can be rather
inscrutable?
I was gonna say flat, but let's take inscrutable.
Eustace is Eustace.
Yes. Thank you, Moira.
See?
At any rate, I would really like to put this behind us. We have to work together after all. Will you accept my apology?
For what? Eustace was approaching this request as if my acquiescence was guaranteed, but I did not respond in kind. I felt vindictive, more vindictive than I had felt my entire life. She looked surprised that I hadn't budged.
For my prank, as I said, and my behavior in general, I suppose, which, as you say, can be, inscrutable. I will do my best to change that.
Does that include moving my things around? I was putting things in my cell to find later?
What?
I found it, you know. The copy of Matthew I dropped out the window the night you were watching me in my cell.
Hedwig, I don't know what you're talking about.
You have no reason to lie about this anymore. I saw you in your ridiculous costume the very night in my cell I could see you in the grass. Did she see the costume?
Nope.
I was gonna say I was almost certain that she hadn't, that she's just kind of...
She just saw a dark figure that she assumed was the same dark figure.
Right.
But
I was not there.
My temper flared and I let out an embarrassing noise somewhere between a groan and a shriek. I pulled up my frock and pulled the piece of cloth I'd found outside the abbey out, somewhat awkwardly. Eustace looked utterly nonplussed. I found this out there! Who else could it have been but you?
Any one of us? A drifter, a soldier marching past the abbey, got his cloak stuck on a branch that just so happened to coincide with one woman's mad delusion months later. Could have been anyone, Hedwig, but it wasn't me.
And why should I believe you? For what you did the other night, you... I could feel myself turning scarlet as I sputtered. I noticed Moira shrinking in her seat ahead of us, and I suddenly felt very embarrassed.
Are you gonna hit me again?
No. No, of course not.
Well, alright. Well, you could if you wanted to.
I don't want to.
Oh, well, that's good.
She was ready for it to happen again.
Goddamn.
She rubbed her cheek.
It did hurt quite a bit.
I felt horrible now. I looked toward the back of the cart for a while, watching the road move beneath us.
I am sorry, truly.
And you promise that you haven't left any mysterious books for me anywhere?
I did not put that book in your cell. Never been in your cell at all, as a matter of fact.
Did we say it was in our cell?
Yeah.
We did say specifically we were talking about our cell.
Or, I don't know. Wait.
Oh, hold on. I just want to check. Want to check. Yes. Yeah, in my cell. Okay, she did say it.
Never been in your cell at all, as a matter of fact.
I looked back toward Eustace. She was holding a hand out to me, and she had the faintest hint of a pleading look in her eye. I was not sure what to do. I was furious with her still, but I knew that letting her anger stew any longer would serve only to make me miserable. After all, we had to work in the same room. Not only that, but I still felt highly guilty for attacking Eustace in response to her practical joke. Justified or not, it was not a response that had ever been in my repertoire, and I very much wanted to never feel compelled to violence again. I wanted to bury those feelings deep in the ground forever. I was still mulling over my response when a pair of fritters appeared in front of my face.
Would these help?
Eustace and I both... Do you also notice that Moira started shirking away as soon as we mentioned the book? I know it's kind of framed as like her getting anxious about us still arguing, but worth noticing. Eustace and I both looked over at Moira, whose back was still turned to us as she watched the road ahead. She reached one arm behind her, two tasty-looking pastries held like a day-less cards between her fingers. Tucked the little black cloth I'd been waving in Eustace's face back into my stocking.
Just wondering.
Eustace and I both took one. I nibbled at it and instantly felt at peace.
Wow, these are good.
They were supposed to all be for the village, but I snuck a few away for the trip.
I'm glad that you did. I could hear Moira come crunching into her own fritter.
Oh, so am I now. Goodness, these are some lucky people we're about to visit.
I thought you didn't like Lynn Barrow, Moira.
Oh, I have my criticisms.
Eustace took another bite of her pastry.
I suppose we all do.
Catherine most of all. I doubt she would have approved of this gesture.
Oh, she would have done it. She would have just complained a lot beforehand.
And after.
They chuckled as if sharing a private joke. We finished our fritters. Eustace licked her fingers and wiped the crumbs off her frock before extending a hand out to me again.
Friends.
I paused for a moment, but I couldn't keep the self-righteous act up much longer. Even if I did not fully believe that Eustace hadn't also placed that book in my cell as part of some elaborate next step in her foiled prank, suppose I had no reason to hang it over her head forever. I reached out and grabbed Eustace's wrist, and her fingers curled around my own. Friends. Eustace smiled, but her face sort of returned to its default flat expression as soon as she leaned back against the side of the cart. So, why wouldn't Catherine have liked doing this?
She also had opinions about the townsfolk.
I'm a little shocked. Does anybody have a good relationship with the town?
I'm sure the superior handles it all well enough.
Surely it felt a little odd that nobody from the village came to seek your advice when you were an anchoress.
I was surprised until I had it explained to me that, well, we're having to take a cart ride to even get there, aren't we?
That's right.
I think that people never really liked that fact. Puts us on the wrong foot from the get-go.
But Lynborough Abbey is rather old, isn't it? Surely things might have, I don't know, improved?
Right, the distance inconvenience is just part of it. Well, you'll see. Suppose if I had to put it delicately, we had the ability to choose the kind of villagers our abbey served.
Which we don't.
Of course not. But if we did, well, it wouldn't be a town like Linbarrow.
I was quite frankly appalled by this. If I hadn't already shaken hands and made up with Eustace, I might reconsider agreeing to the endeavor after hearing such conceited talk. What a horrible thing to say.
It is what it is. You'll see when we get there.
They're not all bad.
I was trying to think of things that wouldn't reopen this just sutured wound between Eustace and myself and was struggling to come up with anything. However, just as the cart rounded a sharp switchback corner, I thought of something Catherine had said in the Misericorde. I hadn't dared to mention the assignment the superior had given me for this excursion, but the reason that Catherine with the K herself had mentioned it to me while drinking, it wouldn't arouse suspicion. Catherine is from this village, isn't she?
Catherine was Irish.
She means Catherine the First.
Catherine was Irish. Okay, so now we know.
Okay, so she was from, Irish. Okay, there you go.
Oh, silly me. Sorry.
Anyway, yes, Catherine with a K used to live in Linbarrow.
She mentioned something about being run out of town. She seemed rather bitter about it.
As well she should.
Surprised she told you all this. But yeah, it's true. We don't talk about it much. It's a fast way to put her in a rotten mood.
I would feel the same. It's so unfair.
Would it be prying too much to ask exactly what happened? She was quite vague about it.
It's not our story to tell. Like I said, it's a touchy subject.
Suffice to say, it put me off the town, the way they treated her.
I shan't pry.
That's good.
I'd be chuffed that she told you anything about it at all, though. That's real trust, that.
That line of questioning seemed to be a non-starter. I'd hoped for a moment I could get my assignment completed before stepping out of the cart. A wave of panic hit me as I realized that not only were my environs about to be completely unfamiliar, I was about to be surrounded by people. Strange new people who sounded like they were predisposed to dislike me. I did poorly enough navigating my own conflicts. And now, though, I would be forced to deal with a few that sounded like it had been simmering for years. How long ago had Catherine been ousted from Linbarrow? How long before that had the townsfolk resented the abbey up the hill? I was inheriting a mess that may well have started before I was even born. The rest of our journey went on without conversation. Eustace furrowed her brow and rested her chin on her hands, gazing out the back of the cart for the remainder of the trip. I couldn't bring myself to relax. The miasma of indignance towards Eustace had more or less dissipated. Now panic was setting in. I began to worry about falling out of the cart and hurting myself. If I got lost in town and Moira and Eustace were forced to leave me there? What if a particularly large crate fell on my head? What if I was set upon by strangers with murderous or lascivious intent? If I had to choose one of these scenarios, which was most likely, and which would be my preferred outcome? Mulling over these ghoulish bits of calculus so intensely that I didn't notice that the cart had stopped. And we'll have to see what happens there.
Next time?
Yeah! We're getting some good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be fun. We'll see you all then, everyone. Bye.
Peace.
Smash that like, comment and subscribe.